Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 12 of Confessions of a Market Maker. I'm your co-host, Ray, aka All Day Ray, aka Exotic Complexion, and I'm and I'm, and I'm joined here by my benevolent co-host, former market maker of 20 years, a man who people are now calling the John Wooden of market profile. A man whose voice has been described by the women of finance as lovely, aka the proper villain, aka Forrest Gump levels. I'm talking about JJ. JJ, how's it going?
Good, Ray. You got quite creative on that one. Jeez.
Thanks, man. Well, I had a full 2 weeks to make the intro, so I hope so. Yeah. Yeah, I want to. So with that said, we want to apologize to the listeners for the delay in the podcast. We usually strive to put one out, every week. But our guest that we had scheduled actually stood us up not once but twice. So, guys, we apologize for that. And also on top of that, I had a hurricane down here in South Florida, so that threw us off a little bit. But thank God that missed us. And then also, JJ. We worked together launching an educational room with JJ as the head trainer, teaching a herd of new, people, veteran people, etc. So we've been busy with that. JJ, what have been your thoughts so far, teaching a bunch of, people, market profile?
I really, along with market profile, also with, sort of the agenda of the market and why the market does things when it does. I really, really enjoy it. I've met some really interesting people, some really smart people, and I find, it's nice after a couple of weeks that people are actually seeing things, and actually some of them are even trading on it. Now, I tell people don't force themselves to trade. We're here to learn. It's an education room, but I'm really, really quite shocked that people are picking up that quickly, and it's encouraging. I'm really enjoying the process.
Yeah. No, I mean, and being a member and watching you, screen share, watching, or listening to what you're thinking about and getting into your head for the trading day is very valuable. I mean, especially for me, I think just the 2 weeks that we've been in there, like my learning curve has just, shot up and, feeling much more comfortable. And you're a big part of that. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of people in the room too, as well. And so, jumping into today's topic, since we kind of, got, quote unquote stood up last week, by our guest, we decided to make today's podcast kind of, when we've got stood up by life, when we got hit by adversities, et cetera. And I think you definitely, for sure have a lot of, knowledge to spread as far as that goes. So JJ, you have a time you want to start off with?
Well, I really think, people have heard about my 9/11 and things like that, and clients stiffing you and things like that. But I think the last thing was the adversity of learning how to trade as a retail trader has been because while I've been doing this and teaching people lately and communicating with people, I'm remembering how I started, and it was really humbling, right? Because it was after my heart attack and things like that. And I've always been a person, and I've had some pretty crazy things happen in my life. But I've always kept my eyes forward. And of course, if you deal with getting depressed and getting down and things like that, but always keep looking forward. But retail trading is probably one of the most humbling things for a guy, who used to be a manipulator. To come to the other side of the desk, and because I was talking to people, all across, and they were telling me their trading stories of, my first trade, I made $5,000 and I was hooked, and and I never had that. I traded equities for a week and I sucked. I did not have a single winning trade, and this was after my heart attack, and I was like, whoa, maybe when they put me on that heart lung machine or whatever when they were doing my surgery. Now I'm dumb. I couldn't trade my way out of a wet paper bag on the retail side. So, that was really sort of, that kind of blows with your head because especially in our industry, when your career sort of becomes who you are and your identity is in it, how much
Mm,
you make every month,
right.
the crowd you hang out with, you're judged so much on how well you do. And my whole identity was being a trader, right? That's
Yeah.
what I was. I was a trader first and nothing else. And so when you fail miserably, right, at it, um, and it wasn't a lot of money. It was like maybe $700, right? $300 to $700, something like that. It wasn't a lot,
Yeah.
but it was the absolute, um, you know, humility
Right.
of looking at the screen, going, what did I do,
Yeah.
right?
Blow to the ego, huh?
Yeah, it just takes your ego right down. So that was one of the hardest things, and that's what got me kind of, okay, now I got to take the bicycle apart and find out how this all works because I have no clue what I'm doing,
Now,
right?
that had to been tough, I would imagine, JJ. With your experience, your 20 years, of experience to almost like deconstruct your thought processes. I mean,
Oh
is that what you mean by saying
yeah,
take
definitely,
that?
definitely.
Yeah.
Because I see something going up, I immediately want to short it because we're always selling short to retail, right? And I was, the guy providing supply. So then you realize, listen, I don't have supply, right?
Hmm.
I'm a very, very small fish in a huge ocean, right? And I'm basically trading. Even if you have a couple of hundred grand in your account, that's nothing compared to what people are trading with,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
That's literally, and small accounts like when you're trading $5,000 or $10,000, that's a toothpick. That's not even a Swiss Army knife in a gun battle, right?
Hmm.
So that is very humbling, and it. Yeah, I really had to sort of. I was like, okay, where are all my bad habits? And oh my gosh, I've got a lot of bad habits, you know. And
Uh-huh.
then you start, going. Then you start trying to sift through the mess of all the information that's out there about trading retail. And my goodness, uh, that is really, and I can see people, why people have trouble with it because there is so much information out there. There's so much misinformation out
Oh,
there,
so much. Yeah.
and as a trader, I could at least had the ability to go, oh my god, that doesn't, like, what is this guy saying, right? But a lot of people don't. They don't have that ability, right? So that was an interesting process. That journey has been really good, and it's kind of prompted me to kind of want to help people go through that.
Yeah. 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 For sure. And I know it took you some time to get proficient at retail trading. What kept you like going and not getting discouraged? What was the drive?
Well, for me, it's different for me because I have a love of the market, right? I
Mm,
loved doing what I did. I loved when I worked with promoters. I loved when I was a trader for promoters and hedge funds and things like that, and banks. Um, I I I really loved it. I loved figuring out the system and how it worked and everything. And so that's what, I was intrigued. Um, when I get, it was demoralizing, but it also brought out that curiosity in me where I was like, oh my god, I got to figure out how this works. Let's tear it apart.
right.
You
Yeah,
know,
and I feel like sometimes you got to get like knocked down to get to where you need to go, right? Like build some
uh,
character, etc.
yeah. Forgive the language, but I think the first step in trading retail to going to be a successful trader is when you start. You go, listen, I don't know what the f I'm doing,
Right,
and
right.
kind of just go in completely. It's easier said than done, but I think if you lose the ego, it's a lot easier. The other thing too, I find, is not being in a position, not trading right away. Really helps you see the market because you don't have the pressure of a position sitting on your head.
Mhm.
And that's for newer traders, right? A lot of guys are going to go, well, how are they going to learn to trade if they never trade? Well, that's great. Are you going to keep refunding their account when they blow it up?
Right, right, right.
Right? Because I have people tell me, "Oh, you're not trading. You're not teaching people. You're not taking trades. They're not paying themselves." I'm like, "Well, great. Can they trade your money?"
Right,
Well,
right.
no, right? Because they don't know what they're doing, right? So, you're sending them to go play in traffic, and they've got blinders on. So, you really, really want to. I find, and that's what I really emphasize when I'm talking to people who are just starting out, or they've had a bad run, is just sit back and watch for a little bit,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because you only have a certain amount of resources, right? I mean, of money in your account, right? There's not a magic money tree in your backyard, and if you have one, please call me. Um, you know, but respect your capital,
Absolutely.
and it'll pay off. And the ability, it's amazing how much you can see when you don't have the weight of a position on you, especially when you're starting out.
Right, right. It takes the you don't have the emotional factor, of having money on the line. No, and not to get too off a topic, but because you brought it up, like, as far as like trading early, in the trading day, right? Like the first 15 minutes or first half hour or whatever. When my first go around of trading, that's when I was trying to trade. I was trying to catch the big moves, but that's when I was trading the equities. And I think that's how like a lot of these penny stock people teach it. But I mean, now learning from you and taking your approach, like you say, like let's see where the market's developing, how it's developing. I think, and then I made a trade today. Even after it was it was very slow today, right? Until boom, you wait, nice and patient, and so just having that happen today even opened up my eyes more
Yeah,
to just
you
waiting
know,
to let it develop.
yeah. Let it develop. And if it doesn't, there's always tomorrow, right?
Right.
It's when you start forcing them, that's the worst. And and I notice, I notice a lot of people forcing trades because they feel like if they're not trading, they're not working. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I can see
and
that.
that's a big misconception. Um, and people, I'm sure people are going to say, hey, you're wrong. I'm like, well, great. Let one of my new traders trade your money, right? And
Yeah.
let them go.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I
you
mean,
know,
it's definitely that's what's interesting about trading, and I mean, I guess I can even say with poker, just gambling in general, it takes a accumulation of skills. It's not just like one thing. You got to have emotional control,
yeah.
money
You know,
management, etc.
I mean,
Mm.
exactly. I mean, and the other thing too is to realize when you're out of your depth. Like we had a couple of weird, crazy days. Like yesterday, for example, we broke out of a massive, massive balance,
Yeah.
and I was not prepared. I will tell you fully, truly that I was not prepared. And I also got a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning, waking me up. So I was a little sleepy, and so when that day came, I realized very quickly, ooh, I'm not on my game, and we've got a big gap, and this is dangerous. Guess what? I'm not going to trade. And then I thought about trading a little later, and I missed. I missed the trade by so much. It was like I was watching it in slow motion, and I missed and I was like, I remember Remo Williams, the movie. I was like, okay, you move like pregnant yak. You know what? I'm not trading today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like no, so I just sat back and watched it, and and that saves you a lot of emotional capital because you don't beat yourself up for losing money.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, JJ, but like you've always seen, I don't recall you telling me you've had problems with, what do they call it, FOMO or money preservation, or you know what I mean, getting too overzealous, like we see a lot of people do have.
Yeah, and that's because I have a lot of scars,
Uh huh.
right?
Right. Right.
I have been doing a short squeeze on a stock at $21, and the stock's been halted by the SEC, right? And then everyone's offside millions of dollars all around town, right?
Yeah.
Uh, clearing firms are going down, things like that. That kind of stress really keeps me from jumping around and taking risk.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing too is I always have to remember that I have a heart condition, so I can't, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can scalp," and I'm like, "Yeah, great. If you've got a good constitution and a strong heart and you're healthy, scalp away."
Yeah.
Right? When I scalp, my heart rate goes up. Right? So I just can't do it physically.
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
I have nothing against people who scalp. God bless them. It's wonderful. Right? Have at it.
Yeah.
But I can't do it because of my health. Um, so you just have to realize what kind of trader you are. Gosh,
Right.
I hope I'm not babbling too much.
Yeah, no, no. Well, no. I mean, I'm enjoying just like talking about this. I know we're getting a little off topic, but we'll get right back on. But yeah, and it's just interesting to me too. Like these past couple of weeks have been even like eye opening to me a little bit. I'm excited to, I'm seeing things like I actually understand what you're saying. When you're talking to me now. What I find interesting is the different styles that can be approached because like in poker, JJ, like you only have so much flexibility with your
Yeah,
style before you get out
yeah.
of line. You understand what I'm saying? It's like if you're a professional player, you probably shouldn't be playing too much different than how I'm playing. You understand what I'm saying? But like in
I
trading,
understand.
you have so many different unique styles, which I kind of enjoy. I think it's really cool. It gives it a little more like personalization.
It is. I know a bunch of people, and they trade all sorts of different things. We got the candle wax crowd. We've got the Fibonacci
The
crowd.
candle
We've
wax.
got,
Yeah, yeah.
they're all, and
How about
the
the harmonics? The
Bollinger,
harmonic crowd.
the Bollinger Champagne crowd. They're all in there, and if they're doing well, I don't understand any of it.
Yeah.
I barely understand it. Someone kind of explained Bollinger Bands to me for the first time that I could kind of figure it out the way he explained it.
Hmm.
But a lot of that stuff, I had no idea what any of this stuff was because none of it's used on on the type of trading that I come from, which is disposing large amounts of stock into retail buying,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So none of that stuff really mattered, right? Um, I was kind of like a truffle sniffing pig. I was sent out to go and find bids, which means go find buyers and sell them stock,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That was my job. So it's completely different than this. So when I got into retail trading, I was overwhelmed by the amount of indicators and information.
It's a lot, man.
Uh,
It's
it
a
is. It's
lot.
really overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, no. I feel fortunate that I've even came into contact with you because, for someone like myself, like JJ, I couldn't figure. I didn't know who the hell was telling the truth, who wasn't, who was profitable, who wasn't. You know what I mean? It's hard. Like, uh,
You know,
yeah,
yeah, it is. It is. It's really, it's very interesting. I never really realized. I never really thought about retail traders at all until I started, coming into contact with them and seeing into their world.
yeah,
Uh, and it's pretty fascinating. Um, yeah, I yeah, it's quite a journey. It's quite a journey.
sure. No, it is, and so jumping back on topic. Well, I guess sort of on topic. You mentioned what I wanted to ask you about. You started off trading equities when you first started retail trading, right?
Yeah, for a week.
For for a week. So how long did it take you to get into a market profile?
Um,
And like, when did you know, like, okay, like this is how I want to retail trade?
um, when I got into the futures thing and I hadn't traded at all. I downloaded a couple of platforms. I looked at it, and all there was an order book, and like maybe a candlestick chart. And I was like, oh God, how am I going to do this, right? And then learning the contracts and rollover, and I'm like, why can't they just use the same symbol? Across all the platforms,
Yeah,
and what is this nonsense, right? They just overcomplicating it. So anyway,
yeah,
because equities, you got a four lever symbol, you punch it in, you get the level two, you're off to the races, right?
yeah.
This was completely, I found it quite convoluted. And then the contract rollover thing was like, oh God, right?
Hmm.
So I think I was very, very lucky that I stumbled upon Peter Resnicek and Shadow Trader.
Yep.
Uh, it was very quickly because one of my students that I was teaching equity trading to, at the software company I was working at, he's a 22-year-old kid just out of engineering school, and he was like, "JJ, man, you got to check out these futures, man. This is the bomb." He goes, because he was a short seller. He loved to short, pink sheet scams and things like that.
Hmm.
And but it's very hard to get a borrow, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you can't borrow stock to short, and you can't short that stuff naked anymore like we used to. So it's very difficult. You get squeezed a lot. There's no liquidity, and it's just, it's a fool's game. Um, and then you have the $25,000 PDT rule, which we don't have in futures. He was like, check this out. And so he got me into it. And very quickly, once again, I realized I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Right. I think I was using one of the platforms that, for sim trading, and I wasn't making any money on the sim. I was like, okay, what's going on here? And I think losing money and not being successful when I first started retail trading was the best thing for me,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Because I didn't get that false sense of confidence, right? Because I was already pretty cocky. I was like, yeah, I held a stock at 90 RSI for 3 months on the short squeeze, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I got it so that the short position was bigger than the float.
Yeah, you scumbag,
Um,
yeah.
you know, so, but, so you go from that, so if I had been successful at first, I probably would have blown up an account because my ego would have gotten the best of me.
Yeah.
So the humble pie at first really, I think, it really, it's like when you start out on a trade desk, you get abused by the senior traders. And I kind of look at this process as the same way,
Yeah, yeah,
you
definitely.
know,
Definitely. No,
you know,
I can think of, stories in poker where people, they go on a hot streak early on in their career and they think they're like, God's greatest gift, right? They can't lose, and then they wind up blowing up their bankroll. You know what I'm saying? And like, so sometimes having early success, I'm sure it happens in trading too. People who have early success, maybe in like a bull market or something, wind
oh,
up
I
blowing the
mean,
account up. Yeah.
here's a really funny story about one of the guys I started out with. He and I both started out on different trade desks at the same time. We had worked at the advertising company. He went short some penny stock scam, but it was a high price thing, and he was short and in the money, and he didn't cover on Friday. He stayed short over the weekend,
Hmm.
and he had made quite a bit of money on paper. So he went and bought himself a new a Mercedes. And Monday
Oh
morning,
god.
they gapped the stock like 15 points against him, right? They just shut off the supply. They cornered him like a rat in a corner.
Yeah, man.
And it was a beautiful corner. The guy worked a beautiful corner. I mean, Commodore Vanderbilt would have been proud.
Yeah.
And the clients bought him in. So in the afternoon, I had to like give him a ride back from the Mercedes dealership after the car,
That was good.
right? So like, when you see things like that, then that's another reason why I'm very risk adverse,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, sure.
You know,
Yeah, good stuff.
so that was a good story. That was pretty
Yeah,
funny.
that's wow. That's a funny story, man. Yeah, so how about us, JJ? You got another scenario in life, a tough time?
Uh, Not well. I mean, there were a lot of tough times in doing deals. After I sort of left trading for a firm and did venture capital and took companies public, and you have partners, and someone's always selling stock behind somebody's back when that's called backdooring.
Mhm.
And pushing the price of the stock down. So it's a very sort of a stressful life, and sure. I mean, if you do a deal well, you've got a couple of 100 million shares and you sell it over 3 years, you can walk away with 150, $200 million if you do things right,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And you can actually fund the company and, actually do it the right way. I had a mentor of mine who did that, as opposed to doing the 3-day pump and dump in a penny stock market. When you actually build it out and you create some shareholder value. But that is the guys who do that, it is a stressful thing. You're dealing with companies, you're dealing with lawyers, regulators. So I've had a lot of times where there were adversity, but I think being on that side of the business kind of trained me that it's just another roadblock. Find a way around it,
Right.
right? Like they, you'd be ready to do a deal, and then you'd go to deposit the stock, and the clearing firm wouldn't take the stock because of something hadn't been filed properly, right? So everything's held up, and you've got people waiting because they've invested money and they want to get out. And they're like, well, how come it's not trading? Why is there no liquidity? What's going on? And so those kinds of things are common, and to people who actually build companies and things like that. That's why they get paid so much for taking risk. Because you put a couple of $100,000 into something, you might not get it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might never trade, right? So, or a few $1,000,000 or whatever the case may be. So that's why they get rewarded for taking risk.
Okay. So okay, maybe a better question for you, because I'm sure we could relate to this. Um, you know, several, like you said, very stressful job. Poker for myself, stressful, which I don't enjoy. How did you deal with the stress from trickling into your personal life, or how would you deal it to stay sane?
That's where I screwed up.
Yeah.
Right? I let it trickle into my personal life, and I let it destroy my marriage. So yeah, it you know guilty as charged. Didn't deal with it well. And I think it's because of the fact that I didn't have hobbies and I didn't do normal things. Like I gave up all my normal guy things. Like I haven't watched a football game. They were like 20 years where I didn't watch TV. I didn't watch football. I didn't go hang out with the boys. I didn't do anything like
Yeah.
that,
Hmm.
right? And because I was just so focused that I sort of lost track of life, right? And it's funny because a lot of you guys will bug me now because you guys will say something. I'm like, "What's that?"
Yeah, it's funny in the
Right?
room.
Or "What
Yeah,
is
yeah. It's like
that?" Right?
JJ doesn't know anything
Yeah,
but profile.
yeah. I mean, I know nothing but the market,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and I can tell you what happened when Daniel Drew short squeezed the railroad company in 1860, Erie Railroad, when he took the stock from $4 to 300, right?
Uh,
And how he did it using convertible debentures. But you just told me who Bonsafe is, or
Beyonce.
the,
Beyonce.
that's it, right?
Beyonce.
So I lost a lot of time. So I am not a good example. And of course, then I had a heart attack and a quintuple bypass. So I am not a good example of stress management. I am the poster boy of how this market will, if you don't manage.
Yeah.
Um, there's Anthony Crudelli, who had a heart attack too, and we really want to have him on the show. He's sort of the, how it's supposed to be. I don't know why he had a heart attack, but you know, he's actually a really good example of how you. And I always have to think about him when I start because I fall back into it.
Yeah.
If I could sit in front of these screens for 20 hours a day, I would. I would just lose myself in
Hmm.
it, right? So I'm definitely that is something I have to work on. People keep telling me to get a hobby, but I have no clue what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's tough. Yeah. So sorry, listeners, if you guys were, looking for how to deal with stress. I don't think either of us are probably good ones to learn
you
from.
know, we are what not to
Yeah.
do. Just look at us
Go
and
ask Stephen
do the
Goldstein and
opposite.
listen to his podcast. He'll help
Yeah,
you.
just look at me and do the opposite, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you should be
Yeah, no,
okay.
I was hoping you had a good answer for me, JJ, because like, man, poker, man, like, I mean, especially like this summer, not a great summer for me at all, not at all. Did terrible in Vegas, did terrible in my normal games, and it's so hard to, and I think it goes back to what you were saying before. It's like identifying like your job, like that's how you identify yourself. You know what I mean? And which is a
Yeah,
problem,
no,
which is probably not the
totally.
best way, is not the right way to go about it. And so it's like when that's going
It's
bad, I don't know how not to let it affect my life. I don't know.
well, exactly. I mean, after 9/11, I went from my wife and I living in a penthouse having two Porsches to me taking to the bus to work.
Yeah.
Living above an Irish bar, and it was so bad I had to work for a promoter who looked like Colonel Sanders. You
Yeah.
know, like I mean, there was like so my whole identity was just gone. So it and life will do that to you. So for newer traders and guys who are in this trying to get into this business, definitely don't do what I did. Have a balanced life.
Yeah.
And that's why my buddy Odds and stuff like that. He'll be like, "Man, I'm stressed out. I'm not feeling it today." I'm like, "Just go be normal, man. You've got a wife and kids. You got this beautiful family. Just go hang out with them,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't have that. So go be normal,
You know,
right?" And then he goes and does it, and he comes back and he's like, "Oh, okay, I can see the market
yeah.
again," which is really
Yeah.
cool.
No, no, it's good. And I heard, people always used to tell me that advice too. It's like, oh, hey, you have a bad day in poker, just go spend some time with your son. Go to the beach. Go to a movie. But it still hurts that I lost. However much money I lost. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
it helps.
that
It does
that
help,
is.
but it doesn't. It's not like a cure. You know what I mean? Like,
It's not a cure, but at least it balances
right?
the
Sure,
seesaw a little
balance.
bit,
Right.
right? Where I never had the balance, right? I would get stressed out about something, and then I would call another client, and then I'd be on the phone till 2 in the morning, right? Talking to somebody in Europe about another deal or getting something listed. Because if you ever watched the movie The Blacklist with Raymond Reddington, he was the concierge of crime. I was the concierge of the OTCBB.
Hmm.
You need a market maker, you need a filing, you need a listing in Europe. You need a 15C to 11. I was your guy, right? I knew a lot of people, and I would match people up with
Yeah.
each other, right? Um, and so that kind of became, it just became, I just sort of fell into it, and I never had a
Yeah.
balance, right? And, it, I did learn a lot, and I gotta say, I enjoyed a lot of it. Even some of the bad times, I learned so much about, the system, and especially, and then you learn a lot about yourself too,
Sure.
when you go through the spanking machine a few
Sure.
times.
Sure. Well, at least, yeah. I mean, at least you have the self awareness. Of how you were and not being, the balance, being out of balance, etc. And so I could see now, JJ, the allure of like the market profile now that I'm understanding it. And even why like I'm really enjoying it is it is a like a low, not that there's no stress involved, but it definitely seems like a lower stress strategy of trading than a lot of the other ones out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely that
Yeah.
way.
All right. Cool. Cool. So, yeah. I mean, anything else to add to our main topic before we move on to listener questions?
No, go ahead.
All right. Cool. Let's jump into it. And so, obviously, like every week we encourage listener questions, technical, personal, whatever. Ask us any type of questions. We enjoy answering them. And so, with that said, first question is from at should be trading. Strategy wise, how does trading after hours differ from regular trading hours?
Um, I think you you have to be prepared for the price action to be a little slower. Um, Lately, though, we've had some pretty crazy night sessions.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but the nice thing about trading at night, I find, is you can really trade structurally if you're in a sort of a balanced or a rotational sort of market where you're in a range and you can trade the outside edges of that range at night. Sometimes I find it kind of relaxing. You put your trade on, and it kind of forces you to be patient.
Yeah.
Most of the times. Lately, though, with the news cycle the way it's been it's been a little violent.
Yeah, it sure has. Sure has.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, shout out to at should be trading, Matt Oxford. We appreciate the question. Thank you for that. All right, now this next question, JJ, it's actually we got it from the room, from the education room. Um, it's kind of like combined from two people. I took a screenshot of it so I could get it down. I told them I would ask you. Um, it's from Ben in our trading room. Also, Raj kind of piggybacked off it, but he kind of wants to hear us talk about this as a full topic. But I'll jump into it. So just to piggyback off of Raj's request, I think outlining the basic formulas used for risk reward ratios as general entry and exit points would be useful, and a bit about how we could set up about calculating them on our own for our individual trades. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I don't use a formula per se, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail about that. It is something. The way I use risk management and the way I view risk management is something that Jim Dalton said. When you take a trade, you have a structural entry, a structural stop, and a structural
Right.
target. And you vary those depending upon the environment
Mm,
that the market is in. If it's in a choppy environment, your stop, of course, is going to be larger. And then also, if you're in a choppy, not a choppy or a more volatile environment, excuse me, your stop's going to be have is going to have to be larger because there are larger price swings. So you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, and so the risk management, of course, is the size of your account. And I think if you trade structurally, like one of the guys in the education room, put on a scenario today where, he bought at a very certain visual point when he understood that the market was being dominated by technical mechanical traders, and we hit the level that he wanted to buy. I think his risk was maybe 3 ticks, on a micro contract, 3 or 4 ticks. And then his exit was at the point of control, or the area that is, has spent the most time of the previous day. And, it was a nice trade. Um, it was a nice scenario that worked out very nicely, and it showed exactly how you can keep your risk lowered, especially in a small account. And that was also a trade that was sort of based off of inventory, even though he didn't know it. As I'm teaching people about inventory had skewed one way and it was going to snap back. So the results, he didn't have to wait a long time in the trade, right? It was going to work rather
Right.
quickly,
Right.
right? And if it didn't work quickly, he could get out and not really lose a lot of money,
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. It
right?
seems.
That's the way I think about risk. A lot of people will, you have one R and this and that. And honestly, I haven't spent enough time, and that is a fault of mine. To understand, the statistics and all of that sort of thing. But the way I trade is, I tend to be, um, when I'm trading, I'm a cheapskate. Okay, I'm always trying to find cheap stock. If I want to buy stock, I want to buy it at a discount. Right? That's how I've been trained. So for me to have a stop that's 3 or 4 handles doesn't really make sense, because your trade location, the best risk management is good trade location. And if you're using profile and you can tell when there's things like front running at a very visual level, then you've got a real edge there with trade location.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. Because when I forget, someone else asked a question when you stepped away from the room for a minute, and obviously I got very limited knowledge, and I don't try to profess otherwise. But yeah, like people were like asking like, oh hey, like is there like a formula, almost like, and he compared it to poker, like a pot odds, like like you know what I
Oh,
mean? Like having a precise formula. And my, my
well,
argument was kind of, well, not my argument, but my theory was that like, hey, like it's you got to be adaptable. It's like the market's always changing, right? Like I don't know
well,
if you
that's
could even
true.
quantify it.
That's
You know what I mean?
right. No. Trust me. They are. I mean, risk. There is a whole industry devoted to risk and risk management. Okay, so I mean, there are scientific. I mean, these guys, they're a lot smarter than I am. Okay, you've got people who are actuaries. Who would. I know one, and he's a brilliant guy. So that all exists. My risk management. Okay, this is really simple, and maybe it's a little it's naive, but my risk management is common sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Common sense. You got a small trading account. What are you doing trading in a 10 handle price rip?
Yeah.
Right. Why are you trying to trade a Federal Reserve announcement? Like, what are you, nuts? Right? Like, just use some common sense,
Yeah.
right? You got a small account. Your job is to not lose that money. Actually, any trader's job is not to. But, don't get in there. If you don't know what you're doing and you want to jump in, it would be like, listen, I'm a surfer, right? I've never surfed before, right? I'm going to go to, Teahupu or North Shore of Hawaii or something, and try and jump on, Bonsai Pipeline or something like that. I'm going to get crushed, right? Um, so a little common sense, right? Try and learn good trade location against inventory, right? And the structure. And, like we proved it today, in education, that, our friend had a very, it was a good experience, right? And it showed exactly how structure can really save you a lot of stress,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
But my risk management is just good old fashioned common sense. Don't take trades when it's
Hmm.
choppy. Don't take trades, and use stops. So if we get a tweet, because now we're in an environment where you have world leaders putting out information instantaneously, and then you have algorithms picking up on those words and slapping the market around, like a volleyball. So it's just you have to use stops,
Hmm.
right? Just in case something crazy happens, right? And know how much pain you can take, and don't risk a percentage of your account on every trade. Think in terms of that, but just think, do I really want to blow up my account on this trade because it's really volatile, but boy, it's moving 10 points, and the other thing is, don't look at a 10-point move if you're a new trader and go, oh, I could have made that, because guess what? You couldn't,
Hmm.
right? You might have gotten lucky, but most of the time you're going to get crushed, right? Like a lot of people will, people who are non-market people will, oh, the Dow was down 700 points today. You must have lost a lot of money, or they'll go, oh, it was up 600 points. Oh my God, you must have done really, really well. Well, then how come you didn't? Right.
Yeah,
But they don't understand. I only trade price action I like, and I only trade when I see it, because I don't really see the need to burn money. Right. I just, maybe it's because I'm cheap, and people would call me risk averse, but I have to trade for my personality and my health,
absolutely.
right? So there's no need for me to go, I wonder what would happen if I did this. That's not a
Yeah,
trade, right? So, or, oh geez, the Federal Reserve guy. I mean, today he was speaking, and there was like no way I was going to trade when he was speaking or answering questions, right? And I mean, nothing really happened, but still,
yeah,
I was just like, yeah, they don't need
yeah,
to, right? Because the market's still going to be there on
yeah.
Monday, right? They're not like taking it away forever,
Hmm.
right? And no one's holding a gun to my head, right? So, why risk capital just for the
Yeah,
sake of it?
for sure. Shout out to Raj and Ben from the Micro E Mini Futures Education Room. Shout out and shout out to the whole room in general. I like all the people in there. I've been having a great time in there. Shout out to you guys. Next question is from at Beyond the Trades. I like to know from JJ. Does he feel like a proud papa at the progress those traders he is teaching is making in the Micro E Minis education room?
Well, I think, I'm very happy with the way people are progressing, and asking questions and seeing things quite quickly, actually. We've got some really sharp people in there, and they kind of help, the newer traders. They're all sort of newer traders, but it's a nice environment, and I really wanted to create an environment where people, it could be, where nobody would be afraid to ask a question, because they don't know. I mean, even if you don't know what a bid is, or if you don't know what a tick is, ask. I really like that. So I like creating environments where people are not afraid to learn, or they don't, it's, where the information flows
Yeah.
freely.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and that is exactly the environment. And I'm not just saying this because we're part of it, but and I'm sure the members would agree. We just got like a good like little group of people so far. Everyone's very supportive of each other. If someone makes a nice trade, everyone's super ecstatic. It's just a positive.
And
And when I learned before JJ, not to cut you off, like I didn't learn by being in the trading room. Being in the trading room has helped my learning progress immensely, and yeah, it's fun.
I've, I've never, I've never been in rooms until this one in the pit. And Well, number one, compliance wouldn't let us into it, and second, it would be like a regulatory nightmare. Because if you own a large position of something and you're selling it, and you're listening to what retail people say, it's, I never even thought to go into something like
Hmm.
that. So, and that's why I really wanted this not to be a trading room. but a room focused on helping people to see the market and understand the basic mechanics and what's really going on behind those pretty lines all over your screen. You know, and a lot of people, I guess they don't teach it because they think people don't need to know. But I like people to know what they're dealing
Hmm.
with, right? It's your money. Nobody just came up and gave you $20,000 to here, go open a trading account, right? I mean, you worked hard for that
Hmm.
money,
Hmm.
right? Uh, and I think that at least you should have a shot. You know, um, so it just doesn't get taken from you in the first day. You know,
Hmm. For sure. And so shout out to at Beyond the Trades for that question. Next question is from Poker at Poker in Stocks. And I think he's really trying to tilt us with this question, JJ, like, get you riled up a little bit. So the question is penny stocks, low floaters, or micros? What is the best for a new trader and why? What the hell? Do we want to even answer this question or should I just berate him?
well, yeah, it's
Okay, I
okay.
mean,
Well, obviously, penny stocks and low floaters. If you want to pay for houses in Caribbean islands and private planes for my clients, go ahead with those. My ex clients, keep them in jet fuel and $50,000 wristwatches or whatever the heck they spend their money on nowadays. Go right ahead because they'll line up to dump paper into your lap. But yeah, obviously, trade a real market. It's a lot more fun when you have a shot.
absolutely. It definitely is. It definitely is. And so he's gonna so this guy who submitted, he's gonna have to change his name now because its name's at Poker and Stocks. Next week, I better see it at Poker and Micros. Change the name, brother. But no, just joking around. Shout out to you. Thanks for the question. All right, I believe it's the last question. It's from Michelle Shizon, aka Frenchie. Do you get your good looks, Ray, from your father? Bet you won't ask this on air. Or grr.
Oh,
Um, well, first off, thanks, Frenchie. I appreciate that. I'm flattered. And yeah, I get, I got my father's features. I'm not going to diminish my father. Shout out to my father. Thanks for passing on the good looks.
leaping
Leaping
lizards.
lizards. Hey, just living the life over here, JJ. Just li- just living the
Jeez.
life.
Yes, if his ego wasn't
Oh
already
God, don't.
big, thank you,
Thank
mademoiselle.
you, Frenchie.
Oh
I
boy.
really appreciate that. I'll be in contact. Anyway, yeah, I guess with that we'll wrap the show up. JJ, any parting thoughts?
No, it was just it's a good week, and it's been crazy. I want to thank everybody who's reached out and supported me and helped me along the way and given me ideas and inspired me. And I think it's really I've it's been a good week, and I'm really really happy, and I really appreciate everybody listening to the show. It's we're very very appreciative.
Definitely, definitely. I second that. Thanks to everyone for their support. So yeah, um, keep listening. If you guys want to trade, come join our room, microefutures.com. You can find out more info there.
If they want to learn, if they
If
want
you
to
want to learn.
learn,
Sorry, yes. If you want to learn.
yeah,
Corrected.
right. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I keep
Yeah,
harping
no, you're
on
right.
that, but yeah, we're a little different than the average
Yeah.
bear.
Yeah. So if you want to come learn, microefutures.com. Yeah, I mean, with that being said, for the gorilla of House Street, Superman Shins, we'll see you later.
Have a good
Alrighty.
night.
Oh, hold on. Cue the theme music. All right. Well, hey, producer, get the theme music going. We're out.